Hello, Harold.
Hello.
Oh,
Do you know where we're holding?
Uh, 300, I think. Max, Marshall.
326.
326. Yeah, 326 makes more sense.
Oh, I wasn't here.
You were absent. Okay, 326. Okay.
Hi, Harold. How are you?
Doing fine. How are things out in the valley?
Oh, that was last night.
Hey, Walter.
Hi, how are you?
Argentina won today?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Messi was unbelievable that guy. Just so
Mario,
good.
were you cheering on? You had your pom-poms?
Yeah. I was happy they won, but I'm not too keen in them.
No.
But they played very well.
It was one of the best guys. It was such a good game. They played so well. They were so all over them, man. It was really a top class game.
And tomorrow's France, Morocco?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
a big.
First, I'm going to go back. Please, everybody turn to page 159. We talked about this issue of when you're a Shliach Tzibur and you finish Shmona Esrei, we said that there was a preference to sit down to say Tachnun. Well, what should this Chazan do? You're moving your feet. You know, you have to wait in Kaddish Tiskabel before you move your feet. So let's look at the Mishnah Brura. 159, page 159, where it says Tes, that b'tachanunim, when the Chazan gets to the tachanun at the end of the Amida, mutter, im ha'akira l'tzorach mitzvahs k'tzas. That means you can move your feet if it's for tzorach mitzvah, kegon, ma'shanu noagim b'shat shetekef achar chazara satfila oiker raglav, v'yoyshev l'tachanun. He says it beferish, that the Chazan can move his feet to go sit down in a chair, because we learned last week that Tachnun should be said sitting. Bimkomo shenoagin lomar Tachnun b'yeshiva. The Chain, Bernie mentioned, oila lebima likriyas hatoira afshelo igia dan le'akadish shem tiskabel sheposeh bo gimel apsias. Remember, somebody brought up last week, when we lane, the guy's walking around the whole bit, and he hasn't done the gimel psias. So sitting down for tachnun and for laning, it's considered litzorech, and therefore the chazan moving his feet, even though he hasn't done taking the 3 steps back after kaddish tiskabel, is not a problem. So the Fershtika Mishnah Brura, because we were debating this last week. Okay. That's good. Okay. We left off on page 327. Additional laws of Nephilas Apayim here, 327. We remember last week we talked about that we put our heads down on our left when we don't have tefillin on, and that we should do it close to our elbow. That many of us used to do it on our hand, but we learned it's really more appropriate to go. It's a little harder to sort of place your siddur. I was noticing this week, when you're makpid to go put your head closer to your elbow, it's a little harder to see the text in the siddur, but that's what we have to do. Although we mentioned in the previous section, Ashkenazim generally perform the Tfilas Apayim during Tachnun. The Ramah writes that some say not to do so if no Sefer Torah is present. Yesh Omrim Deina Tfilas Apayim El B'Makom Sheish Aram the Sefer Torah B'Sochel. Ava below ze Omrim Tchina below Kisui Ponim V'Chein Noagim. So the Ramah brings the minig that we don't put our heads down when there's no Sefer Torah. The Mishmor explains that the reason for this opinion is that certain psukim in the Nevi'im intimate that Nefilas Apayim is performed in the presence of a Sefer Torah. The Ramah writes, I'm reading the footnote, that if one is standing in the courtyard or outer area of shul, when they still perform the Nefilas Apayim, though the Mishmor limits this to a case where one can see the Aron from there. See also the Piskei Teshuvos, who adds that if the door is closed, one should not perform the Nefilas Apayim. If, on the other hand, one can see the Aron inside the Beis HaKnesses through a window, one may perform the Nefilas Apayim. This question has occasionally been relevant during COVID-19, when congregations chose to pray outside the shul. So if you were in an area where you could see inside where the Aron was, so you'd still be able to do Nefilas Apayim. Now, in our shul, we brought the Sefer Torah where we were. When we were in the courtyard there was a Sefer Torah there, so we didn't have an issue with that. Arav Sefer Torah v'tamei yishem mishum d'matzinu b'kro remez shenefila hi lifnei Aron Hashem k'nechziv b'milchemes ha'ai v'yipol al panav lifnei Aron Hashem. When Yoshua went in to conquer the city of Ai, which was a difficult city, it says that Yoshua did Nefilas Apayim before the Aron. That's the source for our din, that we don't put our head down when there's no Sefer Torah. It's good to remember that. Piskei Teshuvah writes that even when does not perform the Nefilas Apayim due to the lack of a Sefer Torah, one should still recite the chapter of Tehillim for Tachnun. Ach lo yidal gol amiras hakapitel ki meseder atfiluhu ve'efshar gam la'omer mu'umed. You could recite it standing, he says. If, let's say you had no seats or something there. The Piskei Teshuvah also notes a few exceptions to this rule of only falling on one's face when there's a Sefer Torah, such as in Yerushalayim, and on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Uvesidur Arizal Kosu Vayipol Afal Pishein Sefer Torah Sham Ach Lo Yasez El Mishu Muzik Bechasidus Uvanoga Kabbalah. He said that a person who knows the ways of Chasidut and Kabbalah could fall in the Nefilas Apayim even without a Sefer Torah. Uvesefer Eretz Yisrael, Lagon Rav Yechiel Mechel Tuchachinsky, who wrote the Gesher HaChaim, which is a known sefer on Hilchos Avelas. Rav Mechel Tuchachinsky lived in the early 20th century, was a major posek in Eretz Yisrael. Kosav, Uvishalayim Noagim B'Nefilas Apayim, Gam B'Bayis She'ein Sham Sefer Torah, V'Gam Kishe'ein Mokum Kavul Tefillah. That in the city of Yerushalayim, they would put their heads down in Tachnun, even in a place that did not have a Sefer Torah, even a place that was not a Mokum Kavul Tefillah. The Tama Minag Lipol, Rak B'Mokum She'esh Sefer Torah, while Smocha Remez, the Pasuk Vayipol Apanav Artz Lifnei Aron Hashem, right? Because the whole reason is because of this pasuk in Yoshua that he did Nefilas Apayim in front of the Aron. V'Yerushalayim shekedushasa kedushas oilam. Harehi kilifnei Aron Hashem. We paskin. There's a debate in Shas whether kedusha rishona kitcha lasid lavo, and we paskin like the Rambam that the kedusha of Yerushalayim is kedusha soilam, and therefore he says being in Yerushalayim is like being lifnei Aron Hashem. The Yeshayim Shef Shashen Advarim El Yerushalayim Shebein Achoymois. Maybe that's only in the old city. The lo b'shchunot Yerushalayim shechutz l'choymois. V'ayishtachavosh anoigim b'Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. When we bow down on the ground on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, l'chula almein tzarich dafka b'mokum shei Sefer Torah. So you don't need a Sefer Torah to do the Kriya on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. You might think that it's somehow connected. It's not. Mishum she'eni kar mishum vidui u'mesir stevesh el mishum askor Hashem ramusakil. There, we're doing it hamelech. It's like bowing down in front of the king. It's not an Indian of tachanun, right? Where we give over our heart or confession. I guess there's some confession on Yom Kippur, but it's a different type. It's a different svara in why we bow down. Which yes, yes.
I know where I saw this.
I wonder today if you can see there's a lot of tall buildings where we in Yerushalayim and you can see Mamish, you can see the Harabayit, or you can see the old city. I wonder if the same halacha applies, that maybe it's there it says B'choymas Yerushalayim, but maybe that is today, that is also B'choymas Yerushalayim.
I mean, as long as you can see the choymas.
Right.
No. There may be other.
I've also seen somewhere, I don't remember where, but I know something that if there's a lot of svarim in a place, even if there's no Sefer Torah, if there's a lot of svarim, you do Nefilas Apayim even without a Sefer Torah. I don't see it here, but I do remember seeing that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, page 329. What is the text of Tachanun? Which chapter of Tehillim is recited? So the Rambam, Tur and Shulchan Aruch do not specify which text or chapter of Tehillim should be recited. The Rambam and Tur merely state that we offer supplications. The person is mitchanein. Today, customs differ between Sfardim and Ashkenazim as to which chapter of Tehillim is recited, as noted by the Piskei Teshuvos. The basis of both customs is the concern for performing the Nefilas Apayim without kavana. Minig Rabim b'nei Ashkenaz al pi Magen Avram she lo loymar mizmor leDavid elech Hashem nafshi esa da al pi Zohar Kodesh yesh sakana lemoves b'kotzer yomim rachmana litzlan. That we don't recite this mizmor leDavid elech Hashem nafshi esa, because according to the Zohar, it's a sakana of dying young. If you didn't have the right kavanah, made machavim kid a boy, having fear, etc. Lachein oimrim kapitel rachum v'chanun. We say the capital that we say, the Vayomer David el God. V'asfarim noagim loimer mizmor elech Hashem nafshi esa. They do say that mizmor. Ach mitama chashash livrei Zohar Kodesh anal noyagim she'einhem noiflim al pneim klal ela yoshrim karogel v'sulo. And that's perhaps another reason why they don't fall on their face. You fall on their face, well, you're really, trying to do the kavod. Here, you're not even making an attempt to do it. The Piskei Teshuvah notes that another component of Tachanun for Sfardim, or those who pray using Nusach Sfard, is Vidui, and the 13 meters Sarachmin, that you should say before Tachanun. Right? The Piskei Teshuvah brings, Al Pi Zohar HaKodesh, Kisvei Arizal Yesh Liz Vadois, V'lo Yud Mills, Yud Gimel Midah Shalachim, Kodim Nefilas Apayim. So that's why Nusach Sfard has Vidui, and the Yud Gimel Midas. V'yesh nohagim zois rak b'shei v'chamishi. You only do that Monday and Thursday. V'api nusach Sfarad b'chol yom. So as mentioned by the Piskei Teshuvos, those who praise Nusach Ashkenaz usually do not recite the 13 midot on a daily basis. But the halachas are relevant for Ashkenazim as well, as Ashkenazim also recite them on fast days and the Aseret Simei Tshuva as part of the Slichos service. Rav Mordechai Elio writes that the 13 midos should be recited slowly. La'achar shegomer savidu, yomer miyad, Yud Gimel Midas, Tzarech lomar la'at v'nachas, kedei sheyuchal lechavin b'perushim. You have to concentrate on the meanings of the word. Another important halacha concerning the 13 midas. So that's whenever we say the 13 midas. During slichas, during fast days, we should follow this Maimon Mordechai that it should be said slowly. I personally, there's a minig I've seen in some shuls where they sing the Hashem Hashem when we're doing it as tachanun, right? And I don't know that fits with Lo'imrim La'at Uvenachas. I mean, because you're singing it as opposed. Anyways, I'll just leave it that way. Of course, we sing by when we take out the Sefer Torah, because it's not being done in the same vein. Okay. Another important halacha concerning 13 minutes mentioned by the Shulchan Aruch later in Or Chaim, that they may not be recited without a minyan, unless one recites them as if he were reading them normally. Let's say a person is sick at home, slichas. You can't say the Yud Gimel Midos Harachmim without a minyan, but you can lane it. Arishem, Arishem, Kerachum Chanun. You can lane it with trop as you're laning it from a Sefer Torah. When you get to the point with the Yud Gimel Midos, he's bringing the halacha that you should lane it. Ein hayachid r'shayid lo'emar shalosh esrei midos derech tefillah v'koshes rachmim. The davar shebekdushaim, it's like kedusha or kaddish that you need a minyan. Aval in bala omrim derech kriya ba'alma omrim. But if you're going to read it, and therefore, those of us if you're in slichas and you don't have a minyan, your minyan hasn't arrived yet, you can say the Yud Gimel Midas. You just have to lane them. You can't say Vayavor Hashem Abana Vayikra Hashem. You have to do it in a different way. You have to lane it. Read it like you're reading a pasuk.
Is this minhag expired?
No. This is not minhag Sfarad. He's bringing the halachas of whenever you say the Yud Gimel Midos, and I know that's the halacha regarding when you let's say somebody has to say slichas at home because whatever you can't go to a minyan, so you can recite the Yud Gimel Midos, but you have to do it in a derech of a kriya. And if you're in a minyan as well, you can't recite it in the normal way, like where the chazan starts and you answer and all that, but everyone can read it b'loshen kriya. The Mishnah explains that the phrase by merely reading them means reading them with their cantillation. See, I knew it from somewhere. It's a trop, as if one is reading them from the Torah. Derech kriya b'nigun v'ta'amim. Okay. Another halachic issue that arises in connection with the recitation of the 13 midas relates to the psukim in which they are found. This is in Shmos. This is, in Kisisa, after Psalacha. Pasuk Vav. Then Pasuk Zayin, which is the next Pasuk, period. Then the pasuk goes on. Lo yinake. We know where the Gemara is going now. The Gemara in Megillah states we are not allowed to recite a verse in a different manner than it was recited by Moshe Rabbeinu. The psukim were given to Moshe Rabbeinu. We can't divide up a pasuk the way we want to. So how could we stop the Yud Gimel Midas in the middle and we say v'chatov v'nakei we're reading a pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu never created, because the pasuk starts with Notzar Chesed and ends Val Ribeim. Okay, so that's the kasha. The tzibur is permitted to stop midway through verse 7 after the word v'nake, since the midot are recited as part of the tefillah, which is permitted. But it would seem that an individual should not be allowed to do so because he is simply reading it, in which case one may not stop in the middle of the pasuk. Indeed, Rav Moshe Feinstein writes that an individual reciting it alone must complete the verse. That when you get to the point of Hashem Hashem, you got to actually read both psukim. Uvidvar Yud Gimel Midas Biyachid, Ha'ikar Sheyomer Kol HaPasuk Ad Ribein, V'gam Davka Below Nigun, the Tachanunim. You cannot use the normal language you do during Slichas, Ela Koloim B'Torah, but you got to do it the way when you learn psukim. Shem Darko B'Kriyas Psuki HaTorah B'Tamim. If when you learn Torah, you normally do it with trop, you should do it with trop. Let's say a person, I mean, let's say like when we learn Gemara, we have a certain lashon. Let's say a person would read it with a certain nigun of learning. So you could learn it with that nigun. As long as it appears that you're not davening. However, Rav Ovadia Yosef writes that even an individual may stop after the word v'nake, since even his recitation is intended to be as a tefillah, where it's permitted to break a pasuk as part of tefillah. We see throughout tefillah, there's many places where we have segments of psukim. So therefore, when it's part of tefillah, like in Hodu Lashem, in Hodu in the morning, there's a lot of fragments of psukim and things like that there. Says the Rav Ovadia, V'lachein tzarich lo mishal kol panim, gabay yachid shekorim b'tam, he argues with Rav Moshe. Even when the yachid is reading with trop, we know that his machshava is to do it derech tefillah. Therefore, he doesn't have a problem finishing the pasuk when you're dividing it in half. The Ben Ish Chai, who was a Sephardic posek, who lived in Baghdad, like in the middle of the 19th century, suggests that it is permissible for an individual to recite only half of the pasuk due to two novel ideas. First, saying one word alone is not a violation of dividing a verse in a manner different than Moshe. Second, the cantillation note of et nachta, which divides a pasuk in the middle, which signifies the middle of the verse, is also considered to be a place where Moshe divided it. If so, then since there is et nachta on the word v'chata'ah, and only one more word is recited afterwards, v'nakeh, reciting the 13 meters does not violate the directive. So let's look at the pasuk again. That's the et nachta. V'nakeh lo inakeh. So the Ben Ish Chai says that adding one word is not a problem. So by adding the yanakeh beyond the et nachta solves the problem. So that's great. The Pischei Tshuvos offers some more detail concerning the recitation of the 13 midos, including that one should stop wherever he is up to in the vidui to recite the 13 midot together with the tzibur. When you're davening with the tzibur, af imit ma'amot, he came late. But tzibur kvarim yud gimel midus v'adayin lo yischil. The tzibur is already up to the yud gimel midus, and he's not there. Kozman shlo saimu rovat tzibur lo ma'yud gimel midus. as long as the tzibur is still reciting the Yud Gimel, Yachol lahaschil lo oimran, v'nigra achrem v'shaper dami, and he should just join them. V'imkvar simu at tzibur shuv, but if they finish, ein lo loimar, v'dino kemispal b'yechidus, and then when he gets up to that Yud Gimel midos, he would have to read it with a trump. That's what they're trying to explain. Let's say he's in the middle of Kel Melech Rachamim, Kel Melech Yoshev, or Kel Erech Hapayim. And he's calculating in his mind, I'm not going to get to the Yud Gimel Midas. Yafsik. He should stop where he is. The Yomer Matzibur, Vachakach Yamshich, V'yigmer, Hechem Shoichas, B'lolomer, Shavachakach Yud Gimel Midas. So you should stop where you are in the Kel Melech Yoshev, say the Yud Gimel Midas with the Tzibur, and then go back to where you left off in the Kel Melech Yoshev, or the Kel Erech Hapayim, or wherever you are in the Slichos. Okay, so we're learning some dinim of Slichos as well, or if it's things that we say during the fast days as well. We mentioned at the beginning of the Shir that according to the Shulchan Aruch, one should not interrupt or speak in between the Chazoras Hashatz and Tachnun. The Yalkut Yosef notes that the same certainly applies in between Chazoras Hashatz and Vidui, meaning for the Sfardim, as well as between Vidui and Tachnun. The Yalkut Yosef also writes that even words of Torah should not be spoken. Ein lavsik b'dibur bein tefillah and tefillah sapayim. V'afim yispal b'veiso b'yochid. If he's davening at home, ein lo lavsik bein tefillah shmona esrei l'tchina. You also should not be mafsik between shmona esrei and Tachnun. Shahakol ketfila arichtehi. Tachnun is like an extension of Shmona Esrei. Vayidei shemafsik v'oisik b'dvar macherim bein tefila l'nefis apayim ein tchinoso shemischanim b'nefis apayim is kabelas kol kach. If he's going to do other things, then it's the Tachnun is not going to be accepted. But fila b'divrei Torah lafsik ben achazor levitui. And you should not even speak words of Torah. V'mir shehifsik b'dibor ben atfil levidu. If he did, it doesn't stop you from falling on your face. But the Tachnun is not going to be accepted as well. Kol kach. K'mo mi shelo hifsik. As when you compare a person who did not speak out between the end of Shmona Esrei and Tachnun. V'al pi hasod, now we're getting into secrets. Ein lafsik bein tefillah levidu af b'shehiyah ba'almo. You shouldn't even pause at all going to Kabbalah. Just go right into it. Right after Shmona Esrei. Mikol makom r'shai adam lispal b'makom zeh v'lo mervidu b'makom acher u'levad shelo yafsik b'emsa. Right, you could be in a different location as long as it doesn't interrupt. But in our shul, if you're going to, we've already established you have to sit, and if there's no chair next to you, you have to be in a different location. What about when we don't say Tachnun? Different times during the year, as well as specific events, at which the minig is to omit Tachnun. An additional instance when poskim discuss whether Tachnun is recited or not involves when mincha is completed after shkia. You know, right now, like Young Israel tonight, we started 4:35 mincha, and I think shkia is 4:43, and we finished mincha, I think 4:44, 4:45. It's exactly this case. According to Beis Yosef, Nefilas Apayim should not be performed at night because of the greater degree of Midas Hadin present at night. Though reciting Tachnun without Nefilas Apayim may not be as problematic. Some claim that Ben Hashmoshes has the same status as nighttime, while others hold, meaning the Mishnah Berurah, which is how we go, that Ben Hashmoshes does not have the same status as night in this regard, and that's why there are people, you know, Young Israel says Tachnun, even though you're after Shkia. So the Beis Yosef, of course, the Sephardim probably follow that. And most of us Ashkenazim follow the Mishnah Berurah regarding saying Tachnun after Shkia. When Mincha concludes after Shkia. The Beis Yosef, the next source, presents some of the joyous events at which Tachnun is not recited, and he brings it in the name of the Rishon, the Shibbolei Aleket. B'yom Chuppah, a noifel mapneim b'kneset sheyesh bo chassan. On the day of his chuppah, and there's a chassan in shul, there's no Tachnun. In omrim vidu. B'yom Amila, a noifel mapneim b'kneset shesham Amila. If the Mila is being performed in that shul, there's no Tachnun. V'yesh omrim she'ein moinim melipol apneim b'kneset shesham Amila. Some people say you don't prevent Tachnun where there's a Mila there. And if it's Monday or Thursday, you do say Vidui, but you would not do that if there's a Chuppah. That on the day of the Mila, there's no Tachnun, if the Mila is going to be in the shul. That's the Beis Yosef who's commenting on the tour. So when the Shulchan Aruch writes his Shulchan Aruch, he accepts this ruling that Tachnun is not recited in the case of a Chassan Bris Milah. He also adds that it is not recited in the house of a mourner in the Beis Havel. The reason for this is that when the measure of justice, Midas Adin, is clearly in effect, one does not recite Tachnun, as this may cause further decree to be made against the
Yaakov, please mute yourself.
What was that?
That's okay. It's
Says the
okay.
Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Lamed Aleph, Noagu shelo lipol apneim lo bebeis ha'avel, v'lo bebeis ha'chassan, v'lo bebeis ha'knesses b'yom milah, v'lo kasheyesh sham chassan. The Mishnah Berurah explains that the reason for the entire shul omitting Tachnun in the case of a chassan is that it's a mitzvah for them to rejoice with him as well, and his joy permeates to everyone. V'lo kasheyesh sham chassan, shum de mitzvah lismoch imo, hasimcha nimshechas l'chol hanivim elav. And by the way, you can see a wedding is a public simcha, and we all share in it. But Avelis is a private thing. That's why if an Avel happens to be in a shul during the week of his Shiva, you still say Tachnun. He's not like a chassan. In his house, there's no Tachnun when in the Beis Avel, but when he's in shul, there is Tachnun. It's nafkamina between a joyous wedding, which becomes a symbol of a public simcha, while Avelis is more private. Now, the custom to not recite Tachnun at these joyous occasions.
Bernie, before you go on.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I think footnote 13 is actually very important. Is that something that I think differs?
Okay, according to Rav Nevensal, we know Rav Nevensal is the Rav of Yerushalayim. He's been in Yeshivat HaKotel for many years. Only the minyan in which the Baal Simcha prays, or the one after which the bris will be held, is exempt from Tachnun. According to Piskei Teshuvos, every minyan in that shul is exempt that morning. So,
Which is, I think, what most shuls follow, actually.
right, every
Yeah.
shul gets off, and every minyan gets off.
Yeah.
Okay. So the custom to not recite Tachnun at these joyous occasions is only at the actual time of the Simcha. For this reason, Tachnun, I'm sorry, there's another footnote 14. According to Mishnah Berurah, it's preferable for a groom to not attend shul during his Sheva brachos, as he is depriving the community of reciting Tachnun. But the Piskei Teshuvah writes that in practice we don't follow this Mishnah Berurah. On the contrary, it's a great mitzvah for enable the congregation to celebrate with him. Okay, we always see Chassanim in shul. Tachanun is only emitted before bris milah, but not later in the day, since that is no longer considered to be the time of the simcha. Meaning, if you're invited to a bris in the afternoon, and by mincha time, I've been to a bris like that. So in the morning, that morning they do say tachanun that morning in shul. In contrast, the simcha of the chassan extends throughout the day of his wedding. V'yom ha'milah, she'ein oimrim tachanun, davka shachris, shemal nazatino. Avol b'mincha, avol pishim ispalin eitz latinik animal, oimrim tachanun. That means that day where the milah took place in the morning. So they didn't say tachanun in the morning. So even though they made the tinnik might be there, we say tachanun. Mashenkin b'chos she'ein omrim tachanun kol hayom kishim ispal meitzla chosn. There, the chosn is the whole day is a simcha for him. V'lo mikra chosn al b'yom shenichnas l'chuppah. But the Ramah is saying it has to be the day of his wedding. The Mishnah discusses some more of the details related to these cases. Within this discussion, he notes that many achronim disagree with the most ruling concerning a chassan and allow emitting tachanun during the entire week of Sheva Brachos, following the wedding, right? Because the Ramah only said Yom HaChuppah. Says the Mishnah Berurah in 131, which is the siman of tachanun. Avo pishim ispalin, the Das Rashal, the Marshal, Rav Shlomo Luria, lived in Lublin, that area, like late 1500s, early 1600s. Those of you who've been to Lublin, where the kever of the Chayzer of Lublin is, the Marshal is buried there as well. V'das Rashalu bach v'taz de'ein oimrin kishim ispalim eitz latinik. And the Mishnah Berurah also points out that if it's later on in the day and they're davening near the child who had the milah that day, you also don't say tachanun. Uvilieu Rabba, which is also later achron that the Mishnah Berurah frequently cites, the imispalim mincha bebeis atinik koidem asuda. Let's say there's a suda later on in the day, and they daven mincha before the suda. Be'emtza suda ein omrim tachanun. You don't say tachanun either. But if they're already benched, and then they're going to daven mincha, then you say tachanun. Because of Achayei Adam, Rav Danziger, he's in like 1750, right by the time of the Gra, a little bit before. The Cholzeh Kishav Ispalim Eitz Latinik. That is, he qualifies while you're with the child. Aval Kemish Ispalim Beis Acher, but you're davening somewhere else. Aval Pisha Bal Bris Sham, and even the father is there. Omrim Tachnun. I feel Korim Asud because of Void. The Bal Bris V'Sandik Umoyel Ein Oimrim Lo Oilam B'Mincha. The Sandik, the Moyel, they themselves don't recite Tachnun during Mincha. Afil Achar Birchas HaMasud. The Yontov Shalahem, it's like a private Yontov. Then the Mishnah Berurah adds, commenting on the Ramah, who said that we're only free of Tachnun on Yom HaChuppah, Shenichnas L'Chuppah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the minhag already existed at the time of the Chafetz Chaim, not to say Tachnun, but what's interesting to see here is the evolution of halacha. That it's not so right. We could see very clearly that in Frierdiker time, they did say Tachnun during the Sheva Yemei Mishteh, and later on it evolved. So there's an evolution in these minhagim. Vafilim Yom Zayin. If the seventh day is 8 days after the chuppah, the chuppah was a little bit before nightfall on Sunday. Ein Omrim Tachanun ad Yom Aleph Haba. You continue not to say Tachanun even the next Sunday. Ma'ad Kodem Le'erev. So you get an extra boost there. V'davka maya achosin bochor akal psula. The chos has to be somebody who's never been married before, and the kala. Aval alman shenosa almana. But if it's a widow who married a widower, or either or, ein zenoig rak gimel yomim. V'chein hadin b'vuhu rakum. It only prevents us from saying tachanun for 3 days.
An alman who marries an alman only has one share. I don't get the 3-day period.
So maybe if what if one of them hadn't been married before? Do they get the full 7 days?
If the wife, yeah. But if there's an alman and an almana, there's only 1 day.
Okay. There's only 1 day of Sheva brachas.
Correct. I speak from personal experience.
Right. So why did the Mishnah Berurah say here 3 days?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, you have to investigate that more. May Tachanun be omitted on other simchas. The Shulchan Aruch does not mention any such events as exempting the meaning from the recitation of Tachanun, except for a bris or a wedding. The later poskim discuss the possibility of omitting Tachanun for other occasions, such as a bar mitzvah, B'dina ben, a siyum, Rachlas Sefer Torah. Rav Ovadia Yosef writes at length to explain why one can be lenient to omit Tachanun in a shul where there's a bar mitzvah boy present. Says the Abiyah Omer Nishalti Oidois, the case of Masha Noagim Shalom Tachanun Fils Apayim Kishesh Bar Mitzvah Beis HaKnesset Zamumen Minag Vasikin. Is it a good minig for those shuls where they don't say Tachanun if there's a bar mitzvah boy there? We're talking about the day when the bar mitzvah boy becomes a bar mitzvah, like Hanachat Tefillin. On that, well, Hanachat Tefillin you can do before he's a bar mitzvah, but let's say the day that he becomes a bo bayom a bar mitzvah. Hine ra'iti lamarshal b'sefer Yam Shel Shlomo shekosa de lechaura suuda shoisin la bar mitzvah en lechasudas mitzvah gedoyle mizu. The Yam Shel Shlomo says that the bar mitzvah party, there's no greater sudas mitzvah than that. Ubar min dein yesh laha'ir od min divrei hazor hakodesh parshas mishpatim. Says the Abi Omer that besides that, we can bring from the Zohar Talmid Chacham Ahu Yoima the Zachi L'Tleis Rishonin Akri Ben LaKodesh Baruch Hu. That on the day when you turn 13, Talmid Chacham is called a Ben of HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Kadmot David Lahachi. And when David HaMelech came to the Pasuk Ksiv Bey, Hashem Omar Elai B'niyata, Ani Ayom L'Laticha. When David HaMelech came to that Pasuk, that you, my God, I am your son. I'm born today. L'chora, it referred to the day of his bar mitzvah. We can't see the divrei marshal b'yam shel Shlomo and now the chashav le'sudas mitzvah. So, in the debate of whether it's a sudas mitzvah, clearly we know what side the Yam Shel Shlomo came down on, and therefore they're going to try to extend it. Ume'at shapi yeshlomer the dvar mitzvah, the bar mitzvah b'yom loslo yud gimel shana v'yom echad. On the day that he becomes a bar mitzvah, poiter hakam lo mitachon and feels a. He thinks it should pater the kahal from saying tachnun. Chen ra'isi la Rav Agon Aaron ben Shimon uminagam shel Yisrael Torah, and the minig of Jews are Torah. The samach l'davar they should doim l'chas is also similar to a chas l'chsiv bei kechatan yichahen pe'er. Pe'er always refers to tefillin. Tefillin nekru pe'er k'yisiv pe'er chachavish alecha b'arei k'chasim ayin sham. The Gam Sharav Achosi Mari Alfia Zal b'Sefer Siach Yitzchak Chelik Aleph Hevi Edus B'Pi Hashmushal long came Bizman Agona Rashal that it was not the custom at his time, because gam hu hevi, sheyesh dogim shalom arvidun filzapayim because of sheyesh lam mishi yismachu. It says he knew other communities that did not say tachlon on a day of a bar mitzvah. They have who to rely on. The Mishpatei Uziel. The Mishpatei Uziel was the Rav Uziel was the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. I think Tzika's family knew him, Rav Uziel. Kosor shebedoretz achronim inigu shalom arvidu in filzapayim l'chvod bar mitzvah. K'tei l'chaviv mitzvahs tefillin arifui biyadenu. That to give honor to tefillin, which is weakened in our hands. Right? Gemara goes through an analysis. Who is a Poishe Yisrael? One of the opinions is it's a karkafta, it's a skull that never put on tefillin in his life. For that reason, Chabad are all the street corners in the world trying to put tefillin on everybody. What does that do? Well, it satisfies that Gemara that says if as long as tefillin's been put on a person's head once, he's not considered a Poishe Yisrael. V'chein kasav b'shus mayim chayim mashash, shenispashas amina b'chol b'kom shlo l'may tachnu l'kav bar mitzvah. K'mo chovet chasav b'al pris, ayin sham. V'kein hanach lav Yisrael shenem nevi'im b'nei nevi'im heim. So he bases the exemption from saying tachnun on two rationales. The meal is considered a Sudas mitzvah, based on the Marshal. And it allows people to appreciate the mitzvah of tefillin, save them from being categorized as people who never put on tefillin. On the other hand, the Tzitz Eliezer wholeheartedly rejects the position of Avaladya and rules that there is no basis for the exemption from reciting tachnun when there's a bar mitzvah. Lidati, Sadak Harava Roshi, the Rav Uziel, who was the Rav Roshi, after he was the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, B'sifro Mishpatei Uziel, shekoyser shedavizer shalom atachnu b'yom bar mitzvah ein lo yisod b'divrei poskim ha'isharim v'achronim. He says this minig doesn't have a foundation. V'rak chadoshim mikarov ba'u, it's a new thing. Yischidul ani came. Yichdu b'davar zel lishama shalom atachnu nigroim hamoni b'chol aliyah shehi. And we know that everyone likes to jump on the bad wagon of not reciting tachnun. U'maisha kosav shama mishpatei uziel la'amlitz v'loymar shebedoras achronim enigu k'sos mishumeis lasso shlashem l'chavei mitzvos tefillin. Rav Uziel wanted to give credence to the minig by saying it's a way to cause Klal Yisrael to love tefillin. L'atzilah they kanas neis from ikarkaftu lo manach tefillin. L'chein kol k'ay shekavnosim l'shem shemayim mitzvah lishmo divrei chachamim. So, and since Rav Uziel said it, and there's a mitzvah to follow chachamim, ayin sham. However, it says that Tzitz Eliezer of Aldenburg, l'dati ein b'zeh b'chtei anachas hadeos. He is not satisfied. He doesn't know that where the lack of citing tachnun, it helped the bar mitzvah boy not being a karkafta to lomanat. The din of not saying it's not a necessary din and it doesn't work. Don't change the minhagim that you got from your mother. We shouldn't change what our minhagim have been. We don't see that there was a minig not to not say tachnun. What Rav Aldenburg remembers, they said tachnun. Even the very careful people didn't say said tachnun on Yom Bar Mitzvah. And it didn't affect the joyousness of the day. The approach of the Tzitz Eliezer is the accepted practice of many Ashkenazi congregations, especially given that the Ramon Mishnah did not mention the day of Bar Mitzvah as one where tachnun is omitted. Nevertheless, many Hasidim have the custom not to recite Tachnun for a bar mitzvah boy, as well as on other joyous occasions, as known by the Piskei Tshuva. The Piskei Tshuva concludes that one should only be lenient in this regard if his shul has such a tradition. Though the Bala Simcha, after this, the one celebrating the occasion, may always omit Tachnun. V'hinei al pi ruach dvarim elu nishtar sheminogim shoyim lahakel b'amir tachnun bizmanei simcha shoyim. The Piskei Tshuva brings that customs have arisen to omit Tachnun for different joyous things. Let's read the footnote. The context of this statement is a comment of the Bayer Hayted that one may be lenient concerning some of the cases of Brit Milah that are subject to differing opinions. For example, reciting Tachnun Mincha in the presence of the baby, since according to Rav Nasanel Natronai Gaon, brought by the tour, the recitation of Tachnun is only voluntary. According to these opinions, it would seem that the halacha is in accordance with this opinion, even though the Rav and Shulchan Aruch may disagree, as they do not indicate that it is voluntary. Nothing we've learned so far has indicated that Tachnun is a voluntary thing. Back to the Piskei Tshuvas. Kigon b'simchas pidyon ben, kishem mispalim shal mincha. Let's say they're going to have a pidyon ben and they daven mincha. The nar b'yom shenasa b'yod gimel, or a boy bar mitzvah, in ech tefillin rishona, and he puts tefillin on for the first time. V'chein b'simchas siyum asechta, a siyum, or achnos sefer, and you're davening mincha, right? Many times we make a siyum, you daven mincha, and the meaning not to say Tachnun, he's going to say it's going to be accepted. You're going to daven mincha because people have gathered. A yard side is being celebrated. People who have gathered to benefit from the light of this tzaddik, and they always learn from him. On the day of the yard site, and they do a suda. So that's why you go to some Hasidic shuls where on a yard site, they may not, of a tzaddik, they may not say tach. It has to be your minig to do that. But let's say you're the father of the bar mitzvah boy or the bar mitzvah boy. It's considered the day of a simcha.
Today is Yutes Kislev, which for Chabad is a real big yontif. It's when the Alter Rebbe got out of jail. I don't believe they say no Chabad makes us tachnun on Yutes Kislev.
Right. And then I'm going to read footnote 17, where he discusses whether this halacha applies even when the bar mitzvah boy has already begun donning tefillin well before his bar mitzvah, which is a common custom. They start a month before, since one of the reasons for the exemptions is due to him putting on tefillin. In addition, even the first reason cited by Rav Vadia requires further analysis on a practical level, since in many places the Sudas mitzvah bar mitzvah boy does not take place on the day of his birthday. It means they were saying if there's a Suda in shul, that might be a reason, but a bar mitzvah boy doesn't have it. Let's finish the last halach of Tachnun. According to the Alichas Bas Yisrael, the custom is for women to not say Tachnun. One reason given is that Tachnun may be voluntary, according to Rav Natroy Gaon. So women may never have accepted the custom of reciting it upon themselves. Says the Alichas Bas Yisrael, Sofik imisho emeres Tachnun fel sapayva minik she'enan omeres. They don't say. See footnote 32 there. I guess in the Halichos Bas Yisrael, where he cites, the Mechazelio explains that the uncertainty is based on the notion mentioned by the Torah that the goal of the Fil Sapayim is to ensure that a person has prayed while sitting, standing, and also with his face down, similar to Moshe, who employed all three positions in prayer at different times. The Mechazelio explains that women may not be obligated in parts of Tefillah that are recited while sitting, like Kriya Shema, and therefore may not be obligated in Tachnun Fil Sapayim either. At the end of the footnote, Alichos Basrel also mentions a suggestion brought about in footnote 18 that women may never have accepted the minig. On the other hand, Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg is quoted as saying that it is commendable for women to recite Tachnun, though Nefilas Apayim would not be permitted when reciting it at home with no Sefer Torah. Tachnun near the Kedai de Tamrena, he says it's worthy for them to say that their supplication should be accepted through Tachnun as well. Okay. So, Baruch Hashem, we finished volume 11. Let's stop here. We will start volume 12. So anybody needs volume 12, you can come to my house to get it. Hilchos of Kriyas HaTorah. All the Gaboim will be jumping for joy. Any comments, ha'aros, questions?
I heard that Balkoyer has to be very sure that he stops at a pasuk, not to run on one pasuk to the next. The regular Kriyas HaTorah.
Go ahead.
Sometimes Balkoyer will read, and he won't necessarily stop where pasuk. If you have one pasuk and runs into the next one, to make sure that he stops. What we learned about the whatever pasuk Moshe Rabbeinu didn't finish the sentence. So the Balkoyer has to be aware of that, not to run from one pasuk to the next, but have a stop.
Right, you have to stop at the pasuk. But you heard they said if you add one word, it's not an issue.
Yeah,
right?
But you run on. Okay.
No, he brought a source that one word extra doesn't ruin it. But if he
stops after one word, yeah.
If he doesn't stop at the right pasuk, he's violating this thing about we're not poisik psukim that Moshe Rabbeinu did not make.
Balkoyer reads super fast. It could be a problem.